Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this week's episode, we're headed to the Fukagawa neighborhood to explore its history that dates back to the Edo period. We check out a garden, an amazing museum, a temple, and a shrine, all before finishing the day with some fantastic gyoza. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, it really helps the channel grow. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Let's go. Good morning!
Good morning!
We're going to continue our exploration of less traveled neighborhoods here in Tokyo today. We've come to Fukagawa, and we've just gotten off the subway at Kiyosumi Shirakawa Station. That is a mouthful.
It is. I'm very impressed that you got that out.
Yeah, and this is probably your best bet if you're going to come explore this neighborhood because it's pretty close to all the main sites that you'd probably want to come see.
Apparently, if you look around hard enough in this area, you'll still be able to find lots of remnants of the Edo period.
Yeah, this area was a merchant district back in the Edo period, and it also has a lot of temples and shrines. They're dotted all over this neighborhood. But there's four key things that we came here for. The first is a garden, the second is a museum, and then we're going to hit up one of the bigger temples and shrines. Let's get out there and start exploring. Welcome to Kiyosumi Gardens, our first stop on our exploration of this neighborhood.
Did you know that this garden is known as the Garden of the Exquisite Stones?
I did not know that. Why is that?
Because it took 3 generations of the Iwasaki family to acquire all the special stones that they've used to line all the ponds in different areas of this garden.
Interesting. Did you know that the Iwasaki family is the family that inherited this garden during the Meiji Restoration period?
Oh.
They're the same family that got the garden we visited the other day.
Oh my!
Yeah, they were very instrumental, it seems, in restoring gardens that had long histories and then donating them back to the city so that everybody could come and enjoy them. If you want to check out that video we did a few days ago, it'll links up here. But this garden has a really old history. It dates back to the 1700s, and this used to be the secondary residence of the daimyo from what is now the Chiba prefecture. And that's how it worked back in the Edo days. The daimyo of the different prefectures or areas used to have a residence in Edo, which was what Tokyo was called, and back in their own prefectures. And that's because they had to spend half the year here in Edo, so they had to have residences. So could you imagine this being your residence?
For only 6 months of the year?
Yeah.
I'm not leaving.
No, this is crazy. But this garden is not exactly as it was back in those days. It's had a lot of restoration work done and changes.
Earthquakes.
And yeah, earthquakes, but also a lot of changes during the years. It is now built around a huge man-made pond. It has a circuit path, which is a very distinctive style of gardens in Japan. And the tree, everything is just very beautiful. So I think we're gonna wander around the gardens, take you with us, and show you the sights.
This is such a beautiful and tranquil garden in the middle of the city.
It is. It's so amazing. Like, I love coming to these Japanese gardens and just strolling around and taking in all the sights, and I love the trees and the pond, and everything's so serene, and I just feel refreshed after coming to one of these. It's like I'm ready for the rest of the day. I'm ready for the week. I need one of these at home to visit every Sunday night.
It definitely feels like you've walked out back into a different time and a different, like you don't feel like you're in the city at all.
No, you can see the buildings around it, like stretching over the trees, but you still feel like you're in this little enclave, protected from all of that. It's pretty amazing that happens. Like every time we go to a garden in Tokyo or any major city, you always kind of get that sense, eh? And it's
this one's no exception.
No,
they did an amazing job.
They did. And all the wildlife in here, like there's a ton of different
turtles.
There's turtles, but there's also a ton of different species of birds, and they're all chirping and adding to that sort of nature feeling, like we're walking around in nature.
Yeah, those turtles are the star of the show though.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. I just like that there's sunbathing, chillaxing.
And they like to come up to you, like with that one spot where we were right down at the water. They'll come right up to the edge and look up at you.
They're not scared of humans
no,
at all.
They're not.
Do we have practical information to share with people?
Yes, if you are in Tokyo and you want to come and visit this garden, it's really easy. It's really close to the Kiyosumi Shirakawa station. It's a metro station. It's about a 2 to 5 minute walk. If you're slow, it's 5 minutes. If you're quick, it's 2 minutes. It's really close.
So the station and the park have the same name?
Very similar names,
All right,
yes.
so that's very easy.
Yes.
And how much does it cost for tickets into the park?
Yeah, so it's only 150 yen.
That is such a good deal.
Yes.
So I feel like we're stealing from them.
Yes, I feel like we're robbing them. 300 yen for the both of us to come in here doesn't seem quite right, but
about $3,
we'll take it.
Yeah.
And the regular kind of opening hours, I think 9 to 5 is kind of their general opening. Last admission is half an hour before closing, so 4:30. If you are going to come visit, I would really recommend coming earlier in the morning or a little bit later in the afternoon, just so you get a different kind of light. Like if you come at noon or 1, it's going to be really harsh overhead light. Pictures are going to be hard, but right now the sun is starting to set. We're here about 3:30, and it's really nice golden light. It's not quite golden hour, but it's just really soft and adds to the beauty of the garden. So we are going to finish up here. We're going to head out to our next attraction, and we'll see you over there. Our second stop for the day is the Fukagawa Edo Museum.
I decided to take a gamble because I've heard about this museum, and what I heard about it was that it's a museum they built inside an office building for some reason. I heard that the exhibits are life-size, so that's what drew me in. But I think I heard multiple comments saying odd, and odd.
Really?
Yeah.
That's odd.
Yeah. And I was like, sounds good.
All right, so we are here. We're just in the entrance, and maybe I would say odd a little bit, but they're definitely pumping up their sumo history here. Sumo's no longer sort of central to this area, but it once was, so they're definitely highlighting that here in the lobby of the museum. But let's pay our admission, which is what, 300 yen each?
400 yen.
400 yen each?
Still pretty reasonable.
It is very reasonable. And let's go in there and start exploring. As we follow the route into the exhibit, we first pass through a room outlining some of the history of the Fukagawa area. While the information posted in this room is entirely in Japanese, a leaflet is provided with some information translated into English. It's hard to appreciate how special this museum is until you exit this first room and find yourself on a second-story platform overlooking the exhibit below. A fully recreated section of Edo-era Fukagawa. It looks incredible, and we can't wait to get down there and explore. At the bottom of the stairs, we're greeted by an English-speaking guide who walks the entire exhibit with us. She is extremely knowledgeable about the construction of the buildings and shares very interesting details about what everyday life was like back in Edo period. We start off here along a merchant street where there is a vegetable seller displaying what they have on offer for the day, a rice seller whose shop has equipment used for polishing rice, as well as a sardine merchant who is doing quite well for themselves. But we'll come back to that in a bit. As we leave the merchant street through these gates, which are closed every night for protection, we find the bank of the Sumida River, which is an important area for transporting goods and something you would never guess, water, but more on that soon. Next, we enter a residential section and can get a glimpse into how people of various classes would live in the Edo period. For example, here is a hint about the status of a resident that would have gone completely unnoticed without our guide. There are many ways that you'd be able to tell the wealth of an individual living here in the neighborhood. One way is whether they have tatami mats. This house behind me was of a lower class citizen, a lower class worker, and you can tell that because his floor is wooden. He has some like area rug kind of mats that he would sleep on, but the actual room itself didn't have any tatami. That's in contrast to this house over here, which is fully laid out with tatami mats. This person here was doing quite well for themselves. Back over on the Merchant Street, there is another clue about the success and status of individuals in Edo times. Another way to tell how well a merchant is doing is by looking at their roofs. The merchant on my left is a vegetable seller. They're not making quite as much money as some. They have a wooden roof. Their roof is made of wooden shingles. But on my right here is a vendor of sardines and dried fish and squid. He's doing really well for himself because he has a very fancy ceramic tiled roof. One benefit of the ceramic tile and why you would want to invest more into that is because it's fire resistant. So this would help this dwelling survive a fire a lot better than the wooden shingles over here. Speaking of fires, the large tower we've seen rising over the roofs in this area plays a role here. This tall structure behind me is actually a fire tower, and that's not what I was imagining when I first saw it. But there was a person that would be manning this tower at all times, and they'd be looking out for fires in the immediate vicinity of this neighborhood and then also off in the distance. And if a fire was detected off in the distance, he would ring the bell slowly. But if there was a fire right in this vicinity where people would have to evacuate, then he would ring the bell very vigorously to warn everybody to get out. I found that really interesting to understand how they used the bell to communicate down to the people on the ground. And if a fire was detected in the immediate vicinity, there was a system set up to deal with it. Old Tokyo, or Edo as it was called, relied heavily on paper and wood for the construction of their buildings. So you can imagine what a fire would do. It would just devastate the area. And they had many large fires here that just wiped out big sections of Edo. Behind me here is one solution to that, and this is a rain catcher. So at bigger merchant houses, they would install these things. It would show the general public that this person cared about the community, and so it would give him a little bit of a boost. But basically how this worked is it would collect all the rainwater off a merchant's roof into these buckets, and if there was ever a fire, there'd be stations like this throughout that people could run to get water to douse the fire. At the base of the fire tower, there are some stalls right up our alley.
Some of our favorite foods in Japan, like the sushi, tempura, soba noodles, and eel, all started off as food stalls. And the reason they started off as food stalls instead of real restaurants is because at the edge of one town to another town, they didn't want any buildings or restaurants, because if a fire started in one town, on one side, they didn't want the fire to spread to the other side. So instead of building buildings to house their restaurants, they would build food stalls. So if a fire went kapoof, only stalls would be destroyed, but not buildings, and the fire would be contained and would not spread as quickly.
Earlier I mentioned that water was transported on the Sumida River. The reason can be traced back to the history of this neighborhood. This neighborhood was actually built on reclaimed land, so all the wells would be bringing up salt water. They couldn't drink it. They could use it for cleaning and cooking maybe, but they'd have to bring in fresh water for drinking. And that was done by transporting fresh water up the canals on boats and then distributed to all the houses by men carrying large buckets and depositing the water into these containers here that all the houses would have, and they would use that for 3 or 4 days, and then it'd have to get refilled again. That just boggles my mind that they would be distributing water like that even back in those days in such a manual fashion.
They should have changed those reviews from odd to great.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was.
I'm so blown away. I'm very shocked. I was not expecting much from this museum.
No.
We've been to the Edo Tokyo Museum.
Okay, yes.
I'll put a link up to a video about that if you want to check that out. And that was amazing.
Because that was massive.
Yeah, it was huge. And this was labeled as like a smaller sort of neighborhood museum, but they really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And I think what made it for me was the English guide that we had. She was amazing, super friendly, willing to talk about anything. And and really gave us a lot of insights about the museum, which we have shared with you.
Yes, I think that we weren't lucky to just get a guide. It seemed like they had a kind of an army of guides, and they were kind of lurking, and as soon as any foreigners came down to the stairs, they were immediately there asking if we wanted to be guided.
Yeah, and what we had read online about this museum is that you should be able to get through it in 15 to 20 minutes. But I think that would have been a mistake. We were in there for almost an hour.
Yeah.
And it's mainly because she was so knowledgeable, and it was really interesting what she would share with us. So I would definitely spend more time here if you come to this area and want to check it out.
And definitely worth the 400 yen admission fee.
Oh yeah, that was really, like I said, I'm blown away. And so many factoids. I hope you enjoyed those factoids. I hope you enjoyed a look at this museum and that it's tantalized you enough to want to come here and check this out. We are now going to head out. It's rather late, unfortunately. We've been kind of dragging our heels in these, the garden and now here, but there are a couple of other places we want to go check out. So we're going to go see if they're still open and lit up enough to film. Let's get back out there. That was an amazing museum.
That was. Oh my God. I'm so happy we went there.
We've walked about 15 minutes to our next site, and I think we talked about the museum the whole way over.
We did.
It was really fun. And this place here, we just got here in the nick of time. This is Fukagawa Fudodo Temple. That's an interesting mouthful. Yes, Fudodo.
What is this temple known for?
Well, this one people come to pray for road safety.
That's very specific.
Yeah, so this has a long history of people coming to pray for their journeys, and nowadays people bring their cars here to get them blessed, so to speak, so that they have road safety in the modern era.
When you told me people were bringing their cars to get it blessed, I was like, what?
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because when we were walking up to it, you can see this pretty big expressway, raised expressway, right beside the temple, the new temple section that they've built, and you're like, well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's apt.
Yeah. This temple was unfortunately destroyed in World War II. It was completely bombed and devastated, and they had to basically rebuild it. But instead of rebuilding it, they just stole another temple.
There was no materials.
Yeah. Right after the war, there was a shortage of materials, so they had to move a temple from Chiba Prefecture, which is where Narita is actually, and they brought it here to reestablish this temple. And they seem to be doing quite well because they have built a huge modern extension, and it's this really weird sort of juxtaposition between the old and the new here.
This temple inside is lavish.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing inside, I feel like it's more of a business than a temple because it is very affluent inside. And you can see all the ways they are generating income, which, I mean,
good for them.
Yeah,
they have to survive.
Exactly, they're thriving. And what were some of your favorite things inside, or most?
I mean, the hallway with the little miniature, like tiny Buddha statues.
That's a way to generate income.
Is it?
So when someone passes away, then you buy one of those little statues to commemorate them. So when you think about how many they have lining this
hallway,
this just a massive amount, that's just one of the ways they were generating income.
I see.
Then there's the lanterns, and then there are all the statues. It was just like incredible how they thought of so many ways to make this temple prosperous, and it shows.
And when I first walked in, I didn't really make the connection that the old building was connected to the new building. So I walked past the Buddha statue at the front, and it just kept going and going. I was like, what the heck is going on here? How does this little bit? Oh, I see what's going on.
Because it also had a totally modern feeling once you got into the new section as well. But I must say that prayer hall was incredible. It was just so big and so intricate. And again, the signs of having people come to it, because not only were their seats how there usually is in most temples, their seats were professional stadium seats that lined like I think 3 levels. So it's like going to a theater.
Yeah,
but
totally.
instead you're watching the monks perform?
Yeah,
Is that the word?
I'm not sure.
That's
Doing
not the
their
word.
ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was also not very clear about filming in there. The entrance that we went in had no signs about photography or it being a problem, and eventually I hit some signs that made me feel like what you were just talking about was off limits. So I didn't film it, and then I noticed that basically the whole thing was off limits. But the staff saw me and didn't really say anything, and maybe that's just because it was end of day and they're more concerned about people filming and being a pain in the butt to people coming in to worship. But we got there like unfortunately 1:45 closing, like 5:45, and they were just cleaning up and closing down.
There were many of them. They saw you were filming and none of them had any issues whatsoever.
Yeah, so that was a good benefit of coming late in the day. But I would have liked to have had a bit more time in there to explore. The grounds are vast. The temple itself seems very vast, more so than most temples you'd probably go visit. But yeah, they're closed. So we are going to move on to our next destination, which is a shrine just across the street. Directly across the street from the temple we were just at is a very important shrine in the area. This is Tomioka Hachimangu Shrine. Quite a mouthful.
Wow, good for you.
Hopefully. One of the things I appreciate about shrines over temples is that they have to allow access to the shrine at all times. They don't really close them, whereas temples tend to close down. They have set hours.
The shrine here, although the main building is closed, all the grounds are lit up for us, so we can still visit and see the floats at the front, the fountain also at the front, and then the main building itself has the beautiful lanterns that just give it a really nice romantic air.
Yeah, it is quite breathtaking, and I'm very, very torn about being here at this hour. I can imagine how amazing this place would be at 4 o'clock to explore the grounds and have that golden hour light, but then I also love just seeing the buildings lit up at nighttime.
The evening light, and the light is like a yellow, it's almost like it's candles.
It's very warm.
Yeah.
But the downside is it's very hard to film for you all. So I've done my best to try and capture as much of the grounds as I can. There are some very dark spots, but the shrine is well lit and some of the areas on the grounds are pretty well lit. So hopefully you'll enjoy this walk around. It looks like they're setting up for a festival or a matsuri as they call them, because they have all these lanterns set up lining various routes into the shrine grounds. I can only imagine what this would look like if those were all lit up.
And they'd probably have little food stalls or vendors underneath selling all sorts of goodies.
Yeah, it would be spectacular to be here during that time. The shrine itself is really unique because it has 2 levels.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you see that once in a while, but generally you don't see that. And I was pretty blown away to walk around the corner and see this building. And Nicole had gotten ahead of me when I caught up to her. I think the first things I said was, oh wow.
Yeah.
Because it does look spectacular, lit up. I love the color. What do you call the color?
Vermilion.
And then the second story with its lanterns is really striking.
And right off of the main building are 2 main streets, and you would never could tell that it's so busy out there. And what I like to see is that lots of people are clearly on their way home because of the time of night and the way they are dressed, and they're passing into the shrine purposely and making a little bow and saying a very quick prayer and moving on.
Yeah, and every entrance into the shrine grounds has a torii in front of it, and that's pretty cool. Like this one just is a big one, I guess. It has a big complex. There's lots of little shrines around to explore. I went and looked at a few of them, but they were very dark compared to the bigger one. And it looks like you went under the massive torii out to the main. It's pretty big, eh? I saw it from the distance. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this look around this shrine. We are going to go find dinner and close out to the night here in this amazing neighborhood. As we were heading out of the temple grounds, we came across this building which houses the shrine's mikoshi, which are sort of like a float. These mikoshi are crazily detailed and so intricate, they look like little mini shrines. Check out this old picture of a festival and the mikoshi starting their procession around town. That is a ton of people. It wasn't hard to find a restaurant. We just came straight out of the shrine grounds onto the major street, and there is a ton of restaurants. You've been hankering for gyoza for days, and you found a gyoza restaurant here called Tiger Gyōza Hall.
Yeah.
And it's a 2-story establishment that specializes in gyoza.
I got drawn in by their logo, which was of a tiger, and I also got drawn in that there's a second floor, and the second floor looked really cozy, and that's what we're sitting now, and we're overlooking the crosswalk.
The main road with all the restaurants.
Yeah. So I don't know if the dumplings are good, but our view is good.
So we've ordered 3 different types of dumplings. 2 that look safe and 1 that looks really spicy. So I hope I can handle the spicy one because I'm really hungry. I think I might devour most of the gyoza. Alright, we're just waiting for our first dish to come. When it gets here, we're gonna share it and then we're gonna chow down. Wow, this looks and smells really good. I get the spice off it immediately.
I'm a bit afraid for you because it's quite red.
It is.
And it smells spicy.
Yeah, it's glowing a little bit, but it also has a lot of sesame seeds on it, which is good.
And tons of scallions, which you like.
Yeah, so you give it a try before I dive in.
Uh-oh, kind of mangled it a bit. I like the wrapping to meat ratio. The wrapping is very thin. The meat is very tasty. They did put a ton of sesame on, but it goes really well with the whole dumpling. I don't think
Is it spicy?
It's spicy, but I don't think it'd be too spicy for you.
Alright, I'm gonna go in and try one. Alright, here goes. This is a big one. You left me a big one. All the scallions, I think.
I think there's 2.
Oh, there's 2 here. Excellent. That'll be a little easier to manage. Alright, here we go. Yeah, it's spicy. But the wrapping is really soft. It almost melts away and just exposes the insides and lets the juice kind of run out. It's like the wrapping just does not get in the way. You know, sometimes you get a wrapping that's super chewy or tough and then the filling is just overpowered by the wrapping. This one's the complete opposite. And I do like the spice. Like it's like stinging the tip of my tongue. It's not a back of the throat kind of spice, it's more up front, which is interesting. So our 2 next dishes have come. Let's give those a try. The next ones we're gonna try are pork and greens, and they're pan fried like a proper gyoza. You know, you got the crispy bottom and the soft boiled top. And I am gonna go in for this one. I'm just gonna go no sauce, no additives, just the plain gyoza. There's definitely cabbage in there. I'm getting like a cabbage vibe. It's nice and soft. It's not smacking me in the face with that pork flavor. The crispy side is really crunchy, which is nice.
I can smell the leek.
Yeah, it's really good. And I like the top side, the soft side. You can bite through that very easily, and then you crunch through the meat and then the bottom of the wrapping.
So the difference between this one and our first one was that our first ones were just boiled and sauce was dumped on top, and then the greens and chili and sesame was dumped on top. And this one has just been steamed and then deep fried, or not deep fried, pan fried.
Pan fried on one side. Yeah. I got like a real meat blast on that last bite. These are excellent. You try one. Juicy, yeah.
Very juicy. Yeah, I do like getting the boiled ones first, and then ordering a second set and getting this crispy bottom. The contrast is really nice. What I really like about this one is the juiciness. The meat with the vegetables, and is there another ingredient? The leek, vegetables, and cabbage.
Maybe cabbage, yeah. I don't know.
It's a really nice mixture.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're liking it, because you tend to not like vegetable-based stuffing.
Yeah, I think they've like minced up the cabbage so it's not in your face.
You just get a hint of it.
Yeah, it's just a tasty, good, comforting dumpling.
Yeah, I think my first bite wasn't fair because it was still on fire from the other dumpling. But the second, third bite, it was really good. So let's finish these ones up and get to our third option of gyoza that we chose tonight. I was a bit dubious about this restaurant when Nicole pointed it out and we looked inside, but it is excellent.
I think we made a good choice.
You made a good choice. I was not super feeling gyoza, but it's really hitting the spot. And this one's going down the wrong way.
I'm dubbing the last dumpling the flat dumpling. As you can see, it's very, very thin and it's very, very flat. So the other dumpling was more of a triangle shape, whereas this one is they've pounded it, then they've used a wrapper and folded it over the piece of meat. There's more crispiness for this one. I like the crispiness, but I think I prefer the other ones because I like the meat ratio more. With the meat being in a clump, you get more meat. Whereas this one, I think there's too much dough towards the meat, and I can't taste the meat as much. Either it's because it's chicken, the meat is more subtle. But yeah, I'm getting a lot of dough.
I think both. I think they just spread the meat out too much, and then the ratio of dough to meat is just not quite right. But you're right, it does give you more crunchiness. You have more crunch, more surface area to crunch up.
Let's just face it, I'm not gonna say no to this dumpling. Just that the other two were like higher.
So wow, we really plowed through these dumplings.
We did.
Let's finish them up.
So here are our final thoughts on Tiger Gyōza. The first one is the gyozas were on point. No contention. They were very, very tasty. The second point,
I feel like they have to be though,
Yeah.
because gyoza is in the name. The
Yeah.
Tiger Gyoza Hall. If they weren't doing good gyoza, that would be really bad. I
would
think
be.
it wouldn't make
they
sense.
should pack it up and go home.
Exactly.
But the other thing we want to talk about is that the environment and the atmosphere. I feel like it's a shame that it's gotten to where it's at, because I think that at one point this place had a real good heyday, and they've kind of let it slide.
Yeah, a little bit. It feels a bit dive-ish.
Yeah.
Like not hardcore dive, but definitely, like you said, it's had its heyday. It's seen better days. But luckily their kitchen is still pumping out really good food. And that's what I find with sort of divey type places. Sometimes you can find the best food in a bit of a dive.
Yeah, but I think this place could crawl its way out of its dive if it's kind of given it a somewhat of a refresh, like not take down all the vintage or retro feel.
Yeah.
Just clean it up and freshen it up and like get themselves on Instagram or Blogger. And
Yeah, totally.
This place
Don't
would
gut
be
it.
Yeah, this place would totally be poppin'.
Just don't gut it.
No, don't gut it.
Just sort of make it feel a little bit fresher, but still old school.
Yeah,
Just
and
like the dishes.
Yeah, the dishes are awesome.
Yeah, you were talking about the dishes.
The dishes are so cool because again they have a totally vintage feel and they're not made to look old. They actually they're just old. They're just old. But when I look down on it, I feel like wow, this dish was probably serving gyozas for like a decade, for decades.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, they have their own little branded tiger on there.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're done.
Yeah. So the meal was a success.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the gyoza. I think a Family Mart stop's going to be in order because I have a bit of an edge still. But the gyozas were really good. They really hit the spot. Kind of more comfort food. So let's get the check and get out of here.
What a super fun day.
That was so fun. I really enjoyed today. So much interesting stuff we saw and learned, but it has come to an end. We're on the metro heading home. Much needed sleep about to happen. We will see you tomorrow.
Good night.
Thanks so much for watching this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed coming along to learn about the long history of the Fukagawa neighborhood with us. If you did, please don't forget to like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. We'll see you next week.